Last week we rushed through. We finished up chapter 2, right? Yeah, we rushed the end of that. We got through chapter 2, and we're beginning chapter 3 tonight. Yeah. So in Nehemiah, as we're looking here tonight, there are certain things that we know about just life. Many people will start early. Some people maybe not as early as others, but some people will start planning early for retirement. And we want to plan as well as we can. Often that planning involves particular jobs. Sometimes it will involve putting away. If your job doesn't have a retirement plan, then you have to put away for retirement. And often when we are thinking about retirement, we're thinking about no longer having to go to this work, this job that we have, and we'll still be okay. That's what we think about with retirement. But often what I've found, Brother Curley, Brother Roger can attest to this, often when we do reach retirement, we pour ourselves into something else. If we actually leave that particular job that we're working on, we find ourselves looking for another job. Brother Mike retired from the highway patrol, and immediately he went to cutting grass as much as he can. Brother Roger retired from the military and went to work with the city. Is that right? The city? Brother Curley retired from the city or county and went to work again. Often people will retire from one and just give themselves to something else. Some, it's another form of work. Some will refuse to retire and never even think about it. They have the mindset that I'm going to work as long as I can get up and go to work, because when I stop work, I'm probably going to die. There's a lot of people with that fear, so they have that mentality. And then others will retire, but they pour themselves into their hobby. Whatever their hobby is, they just dive into it. Some, it's golf. There's men that play 5-6 days a week. And the big thing with this is we've got to have something to get up every morning to do. We're just created that way. God has created us that we need a purpose for getting up in the morning. If we don't have a purpose, we just feel like we're lost throughout that day. We feel like nothing is being accomplished, and we become troubled. We just feel like our lives, or at least that day, has no meaning whatsoever. I know that when I'm productive, I feel a whole lot better at the end of the day. When it's been a very productive day, when I've been busy throughout the day, I feel like I've accomplished more than those days when I've done absolutely nothing. And I think we all need those days from time to time. We all need days when we can rest and relax and recover and refresh for the next day. We call that vacation, or we just take a day off. And those are things that I think we need those from time to time. But when we are going day in and day out with nothing to do, no reason for getting up, it's day in and day out, we have no purpose whatsoever, our lives start to become filled with shambles. It just starts to fall apart. We find many people find drugs and alcohol. Many will find they begin to abuse their family, or they have to deal with suicidal thoughts, and some even may be consumed by it to where they succumb to it. This is just a reality. God has wired us in a way to where we need purpose in our life. And there's nothing greater we can do, nothing greater than to dive into work. And that work that we do, it glorifies God. That's the greatest thing that we could ever do. Whatever it is that we do, we see it as it glorifying God in the midst of it all. I talked with one pastor, and he tells me, as he's an administrator in the school system, he said, here's my mission field. He said, while I pastor this church, during the day I'm at work, and there's a mission field, and I have a responsibility to display God before the people that I work with and before these students so that they might want to know about the God that I serve. And when we look at our place of work in those terms, then when we're going to work, we're more diligent because we're representing God in our work. And when we're more diligent about that, we're more productive. And when we're more productive, we're more fulfilled in this life. And this is, so whenever whatever activities that we are doing, they need to be meaningful to us. We've seen that, haven't we? In 2020, there's a lot of things we don't hear about on the news. We hear about the virus and 500,000 people dying from the virus. Well, I believe a lot of folks have died because of the virus, but not exactly from the virus. There have been a lot of suicides because we're not creatures to be shut up. We're not wired to be shut in a room or in a home and have to be there all the time and not be sociable. We're wired to be sociable. There's been kids who've been abused. All of this, the rate of it has been much higher in the past 16 months than ever before. We have alcoholism and drug abuse has been higher in the last 12 months than ever before. And it's because of people not having the purpose they once had. Well, when we look here in Nehemiah, we find a man who has a great purpose. But it's not enough for him to have a purpose. He's got to have help. There's got to be other people who are willing to wake up each morning and diligently work for God's glory. And building the wall of Jerusalem and building Jerusalem back up to what it should be, or what it should have been by then, it was all God's plan and it was all for God's glory. And Nehemiah was in a place to where he was determined, he was committed, but now he needed other folks to be committed along with him. And we find these folks here in chapter 3. If we look here in chapter 3, we begin to see the rebuilding of the wall. I'm going to read some of these names as best I can. Others I'm just going to say y'all know. And you can see it. So here we find in chapter 3, then Eliashib, the high priest, rose up with his brethren, the priests, and built the sheep gate. They consecrated it, hung it on its doors. They built as far as the Tower of the 100 and consecrated it. Then as far as the Tower of Hananel, next to Eliashib, the men of Jericho built. And next to them, Zakur, the son of Imri, built. Also the sons of Hassanah built the fish gate, and they laid its beams and hung its doors with its bolts and bars. And next to them, Meremoth, the son of Urijah, the son of Koz, made repairs. Next to them, Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, the son of Meshezabel, made repairs. Next to them, Zadok, the son of Benai, made repairs. Next to them, Tekoites made repairs, but their nobles did not put their shoulders to the work of their Lord. Let's stop reading right there. We'll go a little further in this lesson. But there's some things that's significant here about this. As we think about this, one thing that's significant really in this first verse is the fact of this gate. This sheep gate was a section of the wall that was built by the priests. The workers on the north wall and its gates, here is what we're talking about. When we look in these first few verses, we're looking at the north wall, and we'll see how some of the laborers worked together in a spirit of unity, but sadly there were those who were uncooperative. So here we see that the priests take on this section, this here at the sheep gate. Even the high priest himself had put his hands to work. Instead, he wasn't just merely supervising the other priests, but he was actually working also. The priests worked on the construction project just as much as the lay workers did. So in the adjoining section of the wall was built by men from Jericho, and the section next to them by a man named Zacchur. Now this is important. The priests didn't just tell people to go to work. They got out there and worked with them. And I think the best leadership any church can have is when their pastor is working along with them. If the pastor thinks that they should sit back and do nothing. Now there's some things I'm just not going to do. I'm just not going to do. I'll run food from the kitchen to the grill, but I'm not getting on the grill and cooking for other people. That's not who I am. I'll mop the floor in the Family Life Center. Probably the only person in this church who's mopped that floor more than I have is Brother Mike. And there's been many, I can't count, many times when I've mopped the floor. I'll use the vacuum cleaner when we're here. Cleanup days, I try to be as busy as everyone else, trying to participate with this, working with car washes with the youth. I'm wired in a way to where if it's going on and I'm not there, then I'm worried because I'm not there. And what I'm worried about is not that it's not getting done, but how much is going to be talked about me for not being there. That's how I'm wired. So on the cleanup days, we're here, even this Saturday, barring anything happening, I'll be here for the roadside cleanup. But there are pastors who have this mentality that oh, you serve me. Now, listen, we're servants to you. And any pastor that has the mentality to where the congregation is to serve them only, and it's a one-way street, they've missed something in the reading of the scriptures. Jesus did not come to be served, but he came to serve. He washed the feet of the disciples. As a matter of fact, when Peter said, I'm not worthy of you wash, and he was right, he wasn't worthy, but Jesus rebuked him and said, if you don't let me wash your feet, then you're not worthy of my kingdom. It was an example that he had to set. Leadership in church, it doesn't matter what position it is, whether it's the pastor, whether it's the deacon, whether it's a trustee, whether it's a Sunday school director, whether it's a Sunday school teacher, whatever department, whether we're playing instruments for music, whether we're singing songs, it's service to the people. It's not for our own glory. When it's the music, we're all serving God with it. We're not putting ourselves above anyone. And if we ever do that, then we've missed the mark somewhere. It's much easier to get things done when we work together than it is when we're trying to point and tell everybody what to do. I learned that on the job. When I was doing line work, I couldn't ask someone to do something that I wouldn't do myself. And when you're leading someone, when you've shown them you're willing to do it, then they're willing to do their part also. What we see here is a picture. It's a picture of cooperation. It's a unified effort of both clergy and laymen. Everyone, regardless of their position, their authority, they were working together to rebuild and to rebuild the walls. The sheep gate it was on the north wall, the only section that had no natural barrier of defense, such as a hill. There was nothing to defend that area. So as a result, there were two lookouts or defensive towers were built along that north wall, and the Tower of the 100 and the Tower of the Hanel. That's what those are when we look there in verse 2. Is that verse 1? And so the sheep gate was close to the temple. And the reason it was close to the temple was because it was the gate that the animals were brought through when they were brought to the temple for the sacrifice. So it's named the sheep gate because it was of the continual flow of the animals that were herded there at the entrance of the gate. Any thoughts on anything said yet? How would you feel? How would you feel if you knew that the only time you saw the pastor was a few minutes before coming in here? Was a few minutes before coming in here on Sunday morning and on Wednesday night. You never had the opportunity to see me through the week. You never saw where I was involved when something else was going on at the church. It would make you not want to come, wouldn't it? If the preacher don't care enough about this, why should we care about it? Would that be the thought of many?
I keep looking at this and I keep thinking about having that shared vision. Good leadership, very inclusive, and includes everyone. When we look at this scripture, you see how different people were.
Yes.
It wasn't just one family unit, multiple families. It was priests, but everyone's working together. And I think the church should be the same way.
Yes.
If you don't know what the vision is of the church, get involved, find out, because you'll find that others all have the same vision.
Yeah. We've all got to be working together toward the same goal, working in the same direction. Because if we start pulling apart, things will start falling down. Yeah, things will start breaking. Also, we see there in verses 3 through 5, we see the fish gates, one of the main entrances, and it was built by the family of Hassanah. Hassanah. There were 3 adjoining sections that were built by several families, all cooperating together. For some of them, yes. For some of the names, I would imagine for all the names, I don't know all the significance, but there is for this. As you said that for the fish gate, what we'll find, let's see if it is, I got it in my notes. Well, it was actually, no, really, it's because the fish gate, it's called that probably because it's the site of the commercial marketing. And fish was part of that commercial, And so so the fish market, or the city's major fish markets, were there nearby that area. So location of these gates, exactly, because you know how we are in Robeson County, how most of us, you ask us how to get somewhere. If you don't know landmarks, you can't give the directions. You know, how many of us are like that? Raise your hand, Iola. Yeah. So that's right. So you'll see that a lot here in the city of Jerusalem. So whatever's nearby that city, whether it's a road name, or whether it's the fish market, or whether it's where they brought the animals in and out, they have that gate named so it's identifiable. With our signs on the road, right out here, Reedy Branch Baptist Church, Why do we put the sign out here? I mean, why are we called Reedy Branch Baptist Church? So that when people come here, they know where they're coming to. They're coming to a Baptist church. So they know what some of the teaching are going to be. If you go to a Pentecostal holiness church, you have an idea of what the teaching might be. Now, every church is unique. Every church is different. Every church is, there are some churches, they follow their conference that they belong to, and they follow their rules and regulations, the hierarchy of the conferences. And then you have independent churches where you won't know nothing about them till you get inside them, and you find out about the church then. And then you have Baptist churches where you're not going to go to two Baptist churches that are exactly alike. Every Baptist church is an independent church. And every church is run by the congregation, so we do things different. Some Baptist churches, it's all praise and worship. Some Baptist churches, it's nothing but hymns. Some, it's nothing but Southern gospel. Some, it's a mixture. Some, they have material from Lifeway. Some, they have material from Boardman. It's just whatever that body of believers choose. And what we do as Baptists is we come together and say we're going to partner to do missions locally, nationally, and globally. That's what being part of the Baptist church is. But then when you get involved with different denominations, you find out. So we have these signs, and we see these signs, and we can see, okay, if I go here, I can expect this. It's like that at these gates. When you walk by a certain place, okay, that's the gate we're going in. We're going in that gate because, well, the fish gate, they're selling fish over there. It's something easily to be remembered.
Names and numbers all got a different meaning, and it informs you that much better when you know it.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, when you get a lot of symbolism, especially in the Jewish culture. And we see this throughout the scriptures. Now, note there were two of the three families actually built two sections. And here we see that the families of Meremoth and Meshullam. What interests me is if you get there in verse 4. In verse 4, it speaks about making repairs. It says, and next to Meremoth, the son of Urijah, the son of Koz, made repairs. Next to them, Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, the son of Meshezabel, made repairs next to them. Now, when we see that word repair, we don't need to be thrown off by it. It's not this thing of patching up or putting together enough to where you get by. You know, we make little repairs and then we make real repairs. Here, what they were doing, they were strengthening what was weak. They were strengthening what might have been broken. It was made strong. They were repairing it so that it would withstand any attack that would come against that area of the wall. They were totally committed to doing their very best. And sometimes it's more efficient to repair something than to replace something. And then there are other times when it's more efficient to replace something than to repair. And so they were building the strongest wall that they could possibly build. And so there in verse 5, we see that next to them, the Tekoites made repairs, but their nobles did not put their shoulders to the work of the Lord. Now, unfortunately, not everyone was committed to the project. When you're around a large group of people, whether it's a few hundred or a few million, you're not going to get everybody on the same page. Y'all can't get 21 people on the same page in y'all's meeting, can you? You're not. We have 10 deacons here, and for the most part, I can say we're usually on the same page. But we will hear everyone out, and we try to make sure that everyone knows where the other's coming from, so that we can make a decision that everyone's pleased with. It may not be the decision I would rather make, but I understand why they're making it, and we can move forward with no dissension or no division. We all find ourselves in that at times. And so here these Tekoites, they were making repairs, but their leaders and their nobles, they were refusing to help. They were refusing to supervise. They were refusing to do anything. They would not put their shoulder to the plow. They just refused to do the work. The Tekoa was a small town, maybe about 11 miles just south of Jerusalem. But it's the hometown of the prophet Amos that we find in the scriptures, in the Old Testament. It was his hometown. We know this because in Amos 1:1, the words of Amos, who was among the sheep breeders of Tekoa. That's where he was from. He was part of them. The city was close to a territory called the Arab Geshem, which was they were controlled by the Arab Geshem. And so this is someone who was going to be an opponent to Nehemiah and the Jewish returnees. So apparently the leaders in Tekoa felt their authority would be threatened if Jerusalem was secured, if it was built back to where it once was, if it was secured to where they could defend themselves. Here, apparently these folks of Tekoa, some of them, or at least the leaders there, felt like their leadership or their authority would be questioned or be threatened, that they would lose that authority. Or maybe the leaders just felt they were too good. They were too good to put their hands to manual labor. You know, there's some people that feel that way, don't you? There's some people that manual labor ain't for me. Daddy had hired this man. We were doing line work. I was in college, so I wasn't there to witness it, but there were several guys that were there that were telling me about it one day. And this guy, he come to work. He was a first-class lineman. Well, the company he had worked with before he come to work with Daddy obviously done things a little different. With our company, it was so small that everybody chipped in and everybody done what needed to be done. So if you were a first-class lineman or lead lineman or even the supervisor, if you were the foreman, you used the shovel and you used tamps and you used what everyone else was using when it was needed. So they had set a pole. This guy, there was no need for him to be in the bucket truck doing anything. They set the pole. One guy was on the line truck, operating that truck, setting the pole in the hole. They get it set. They tell this guy, grab one of the shovels and help fill up the hole. And my hands don't fit a shovel anymore. I'm a lineman. So Daddy handed him the tamp and said, well, use that then. You'd rather use the shovel than use the tamp. So here, there's some people that they're not going to put their hands to certain things. And there's some people that aren't made for manual labor. I get that. There's some people that they just can't get it. But you put them in front of a computer and they'll outwork anybody around them. I get that. But when it comes to coming together, we've got to have cooperation. We've got to have a spirit of unity. And here, these people, these leaders of the Tekoas, it could have been, we don't know what their reasoning was. Could have been that they just felt they were too proud. But whatever the case, the citizens of Tekoa cooperated and got their section of the wall built. But, however, their officials just wasn't going to help. The fish gate itself was also protected by two towers. Two towers that were strategically placed to defend that north wall. Now, in the building of the old gate and the sections of the wall adjoining it, two great truths are seen. And we really need to see these truths. One is how God uses all kinds of people to get the task done. We start seeing that, where he's got priests and he's got the citizens working, but we're going to see even more. And the other important thing to note is this spirit of unity. The old gate was built by families of two men. Let's look there, start looking in verse 6. Moreover, Jehoiada, the son of Peshay, and Meshullam, the son of Bezadiah, repaired the old gate. They laid its beams and hung its doors and with its bolts and bars. And next to them, Melatiah, the Gibeonite, Jadon, y'all know it. And the men of Gibeon and Mizpah repaired the residence and the governor of the region beyond the river. Next to him, Uzziel, the son of one of the goldsmiths, made repairs. Also next to him, Hananiah, one of the perfumers, made repairs. And they fortified Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. So when we look here in these verses, we're seeing all sorts of folks getting involved. People from Gibeon and Mizpah also helped with the project, building the next section we see in verse 7. Their cooperation and commitment to the project is very significant. These two cities were under the authority of the governor of the region beyond the river. What this means is that the governor himself supported the project. Now, the business leaders, tradesmen, they also supported the project, building in the next section. One of the business leaders was a goldsmith named Uzziel. The other was a perfume maker named Hananiah. And these business leaders undertook construction as far as the broad wall. Now, when we look here from verses 8 to 12, do I need to read all of that? Next to Uzziel, I read 8. Verse 9, next to them, Raphael, the son of Hur, leader of half the district of Jerusalem, made repairs. Next to them, Jedediah, the son of Harumaph, made repairs in front of his house. And next to him, Hattush, the son of Hashabniah, made repairs. Malchijah, the son of Harim, and Hashem, the son of repaired another section, as well as the tower of the ovens. And next to him was Shallum, the son of Halahesh, leader of half the district of Jerusalem. He and his daughters made repairs. And I'm going to read verses 13 and 14, and we'll quit when we get those. Hanun, the inhabitants of Genoa, repaired the valley gate. They built it, hung its doors with its bolts and bars, and repaired 1,000 cubits of the wall as far as the refuse gate. And Malchani, the son of Rechab, leader of the district of Beth Harim, repaired the refuse gate. He built it and hung its doors with its bolts and bars. So here next, we see business leaders. So there's been business leaders, there's been priests, there's been some governors, there's been just the townspeople, but even political people become involved in this building project. Shallum, the chief ruler of the half district of Jerusalem, repaired a section adjoining the work of two businessmen. We see that in verse 12. As well as his daughters. His daughters even jumped in to help with the construction. What this indicates is there was both men and women working on rebuilding the city of Jerusalem. People who had houses sitting next to the wall also joined into the project. So it suggests the importance of neighbors cooperating with one another, looking out for and taking care of their neighborhood. The next section we see is the Tower of the Ovens in verse 11 were built by two men Yeah, I can't pronounce those words either. What's important here is that everyone was assigned very specific tasks and that everyone cooperated together in a unified effort. Each person kept his or her eyes on the specific task. They worked to accomplish the project. Now, each used their own special gift that God had given them. And throughout this chapter, there's 38 workers. There's 42 different groups that are named, all cooperating together. All were working together to build cities, to build their city and its walls. So we have political leaders, we have priests, we have the people, men and women, and we have business leaders and craftsmen, all taking place in this work. How many gates? There's 12 gates.
I would thought so, but it's 12 gates. You see,
Yeah.
I'm at now, I count 8.
Is 8 what you counted?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll be honest with you, I'll know more next week about that. I'll know more next week. Huh? It's a lot of gates, but within the gates is the walls that is in between those gates. And some of the walls are very long. We'll see here in this next section, the cooperation was so essential that even any task that requires more than one person, we have to have cooperation. There's a oneness of spirit. That's got to be part of cooperation. We've got to have that. If we're going to get anything accomplished, there's got to be a oneness of spirit. Unless there is unity, people are moving in different directions and they're pulling against each other and nothing really is being accomplished. And the result of pulling against each other is dissension and divisiveness. We've been talking about division, haven't we? Several weeks now on Sunday morning. And so that happens when we're going against one another, when we're going in different directions. So here's some things that usually, when you have division, it rips apart. It rips apart families. Division will rip apart families. Friends. And when you can have a group of friends that can be tight, and one issue can tear that friendship apart. Workers, your co-workers, your classmates, athletes. Haven't we seen that? One athlete finds out what another's making, and it'll tear a whole championship team apart because I've got to make as much as he's making. You know, we can become very divisive with these things.
There's a lot going on here that I think it's really important to realize that for so many years, no one touched the wall.
No one.
It was too overwhelming. We couldn't do it. And all of a sudden, we had a great leader come in. And it's not like he just asked one person to do all the work, and then it takes years and years and years to be done. He actually breaks it down into small, manageable pieces. We focus on this case. We focus on this section. And I'm thinking that has to be a man of God. That would be together working at the exact same time. I mean, imagine how many different places he had to go and how many people he had to talk to.
Yeah.
It's
So
a miracle, to be honest.
he didn't arrive and just start working. There had to be a plan that was put together. Amen. I mean, God, that's why it was successful.
That situation kind of reminds me of Reed Branch years ago. We wanted to remodel this section of the classroom before the classroom building was built. Nothing got that building done, it had slacked off, there was no work done. Brother Charles said up there, he said, what y'all want to do? Let's do it, let's start tomorrow. And we started remodeling the classrooms here, and the whole church, I mean, from the oldest to the youngest, got involved in it and worked, and the job got done. And I don't remember any confusion that happened except for the time when we saw that the church had snake skins coming in. But it got done, and just because Brother Charles put it there, so let's start.
Yeah.
And seemed like right after that, the educational wing was built.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the cooperation of the whole group. God had to be in it, and God had to be in that for everybody to work together and they had to see the need and the want to, and leadership got started.
Right. Well, and keep in mind now, with Nehemiah, it wasn't just that he prayed, God told him what to do, and he went and started working. He got everybody on board with the plan. He got everybody on board with the vision. So he had to share with them his heart. They had to see his heart in this. Because when he got there, his plan was in place. He had an idea of everything he was going to do when he got there, because he had spent 4 months praying before he ever went to the king. So when he got there, he come with all the papers to give to the officials that were there. And then once he got the people, after he had talked with enough people, they went ahead and got started. You know, here's the thing. In that day, in that time, he had enough of know-how about him to see, okay, this is how it's going to best work. Let me go convince them. Sometimes being a leader, the most important thing we can do is convince those who we are leading that this is how important this is to you as a leader. Anybody preaching, if the congregation can't sense that they believe what they're preaching, it's of no good. Anybody teaching, whoever's listening, if they don't know that you believe what you're teaching, it's no good. Same thing with witnessing. If we encounter someone who's lost, if they don't sense that we believe in this man Jesus, that we believe he is a healer and he is the Savior of the world, they're not going to believe it either. It doesn't mean we have to be loud. It doesn't mean we have to shout it from the rooftops, but it means that this is real to us. And because it's real to us, it will come across to others. But it has to be, man, will God comfort you in a troubled time? And if you've been through a troubled time, you know he will. Yeah. There's some things that I've not experienced, but there's some things I have. And I know how God was with me, and I've been able to watch and see how he is with others. And when we pay attention to those things, man, it becomes very real. I got to let y'all go. Where are we at? But you're right, Brother Don. It is something that we really have to see. Because with all of these things, you think of social organizations, churches that are divided because people are pulling in different directions. Man, it breaks my heart. I don't know how it does you, but it breaks my heart when I see churches split. When I see new churches starting because someone left another church because they got rid of the pastor, or they left that church because somebody else wanted to just go start their own work. You know, it breaks my heart. If a church plants a church, that's one thing. I'm on board with that. But not because there's division in the church that you go and start another church. I don't see how God's going to bless that. I really don't, because you're leaving with an alt against your brothers and you're trying to start a church when God says bring your alt to the altar and go settle it before you ask him for anything. How do we expect it to be blessed and for it to prosper? Yeah, when we're building off of division. If we're going to build, we have to build off of unity. Harmony. Success in maintaining order and achieving goals is largely dependent on harmony. And the truth is, these are my words. These aren't anybody else's. To have complete and total fulfillment, we must have harmony. Harmony between us and harmony between us and God. And we won't have harmony between us until there's harmony between us and God. What breaks harmony? Simple: pride, lust of the flesh, and lust of the eyes. That's what breaks the harmony between us and God and each other.
We ain't got harmony. We got all together, brothers and sisters, or harmony that we ain't gonna have with God either.
That, right, right. Actually, I'm a believer of this. If I've got a problem with my brother or sister, then there's a problem between me and God. Because if I get me and God right, I won't have this problem. I'm just a believer. Whenever there's dissension among people, then there's an issue with people and God. We get that right, we can't help but get each other right. It's Matthew 18 and 19 tells us, it speaks about unity. Unity. There has to be harmony. There has to be unity. It tells us here, again, I say to you, if two of you agree on earth concerning anything that they ask, it will be done to them by my Father in heaven. But we've got to agree. We've got to agree. 1 Corinthians 1 and 10. Now I plead with you, plead with you, brethren, by the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, that you all speak the same thing. I could have underlined that. That there be no divisions among you, but you be perfectly joined together, of the same mind and in the same judgment. In Philippians 1 and 27, only let your conduct be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or am absent, I may hear of your affairs, that you stand fast in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel. One of my closest friends in ministry, throughout what broke his heart most throughout 2020 was he's not on Facebook. This friend, this pastor, he refuses to get on Facebook, but his wife's on Facebook. And to be able to see things that those of his congregation were posting that could be divisive. His heart was broken over that. And it goes back to this verse. If we are born again believers, our conduct should be worthy of Christ. Paul is saying here, whether I'm with you or whether I'm away from you. And that's what this pastor was saying to me. He said, they know I'm not on Facebook. It's almost as if they go on there and say these things thinking I'm not going to find it out. And it ain't about me finding it out. It's about their witness. So, and that's what Paul was telling the Philippians. Whether I'm with you or whether I'm not, be of one spirit, of one mind, striving together. Whether it's Sunday or whether it's Thursday, we should be of one mind, one spirit, striving together. Because it's not a matter of if the preacher or if the deacons see me or hear me. God sees all, and he knows all. He's aware of all. And he wants us to be joined together. Any other thoughts, comments? That's where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
That was good fellowship with all of them working too. Good fellowship.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I've never been out here on a work day to where it wasn't good fellowship time. To where when the people come together, that whether it was 3 or 4 or ever how many ladies is working to clean the kitchen, they're talking with one another. They're enjoying that time. We out here, 4 hours, 5 at the most, really sore and tired when we leave, but we've had a good time together. Anytime we have the opportunity to join together, to come together, to work together, it's a time that God can get glory out of what's been taking place. Well, the only way we're going to get to know one another is to spend time with each other. And you're right, it will strengthen. And it's hard for me to let my child or my grandchild be looked after by you if I don't know anything at all about you.